Hi guys, this is Connie, back for some more Connie Reads Ghost of Spirit Bear. We're on chapter 8. Friday, Cole arrived at school early and found the doors still locked. He hung out near the steps, apart from several other students who stood around the ratty bulldog statue, sneaking smokes. The sound of a skateboard clattering down the sidewalk caused Cole to turn and look. He squinted into the bright morning sun. Skateboards weren't allowed on the school grounds, but nobody enforced the rule. The skater was only a dozen yards away when Cole realized it was Keith. At that same instant, Keith spotted Cole, kicking faster and laughing loudly. He changed directions, aiming straight at Cole. At the last second, Cole jumped aside. Keith swerved too, but a wheel caught a crack in the sidewalk and sent him head first into the steps with a sickening grunt. The students standing near the building laughed as Keith writhed on the steps, holding his face. Blood gushed from his nose and mouth. Cole could see broken teeth and torn skin. Keith pulled himself down onto the sidewalk. Then he collapsed and rolled onto his back, coughing and gagging on his own blood. Cole hesitated, then rushed to Keith's side. He knelt down and pulled Keith's head over so he wouldn't choke. The students crowded around, but their laughter had stopped. "He's hurt! Get help!" Cole shouted. A couple of students ran toward the school. "Someone call 911, Cole shouted. A girl pulled out her cell phone and called as Cole held Keith firmly. Keith opened his eyes, glanced up, and their eyes met. Then he closed his eyes again, grimacing in pain. Blood kept flowing from his nose and mouth. "You'll be okay. You'll be okay," Cole repeated as more students gathered to gawk. It reminded Cole of when he had been mauled by the spirit bear. He knew the feeling of being helpless. What if Keith was dying? It was weird, but for a moment Cole felt as if he were holding himself. Finally, several teachers came rushing across the lawn as the sound of a siren wailed toward the school. A red and white ambulance pulled into sight, lights flashing, and drove up on the sidewalk. 2 paramedics jumped out and rushed to Keith's side. One took his pulse while the other checked his eyes and looked into his bloodied mouth. "I've got his head now," said the paramedic, allowing Cole to stand and back away. They placed a big plastic collar around Keith's neck and strapped him to a backboard, then lifted him carefully into the waiting ambulance. Covered with blood, Cole watched the ambulance pull away. The office secretary approached him. "Are you okay?" Cole nodded. "Thanks for helping," she said. "Go home and clean up. I'll have you excused from class until you get back." When Cole arrived home, his mother still hadn't left for work. Coming from her bedroom, she spotted Cole, his t-shirt covered in blood. Coming from her bedroom, she spotted Cole, his t-shirt covered in blood. "Oh no," she cried. "Did Keith do this to you again?" Keith wrecked his skateboard. "Where are you hurt?" "This is all his blood," Cole said. "I helped him. I held his head until the ambulance came." "You helped him?" "Someone had to." All day, rumors of Keith's accident spread. After Cole returned to school, kids kept asking him what had happened. "I guess he couldn't stop," Cole repeated. "Did you make him fall?" one student asked. "No," Cole replied firmly, haunted by the memory of Keith's scared eyes. He wondered if this accident would make Keith realize how foolish he was being. When school finally ended, Cole stopped by the office to ask about Keith. "He was admitted to the hospital," the secretary said. "The one near the interstate?" She nodded, raising an eyebrow. "Thanks." Peter caught up to Cole as he headed out the front door. "Where are you going?" he asked. Cole didn't feel much like explaining, but he didn't want to hurt Peter's feelings either. "I'm going to the hospital to check on Keith." Peter wrinkled his forehead with a puzzled look. "Why are you doing that?" he asked. "He tried to run you over." "I'm just going to see if he's okay." "You're weird," Peter said. "I hope he hurt his brain. Can I go with you?" Cole hesitated and then nodded. "Sure. Maybe we can go someplace afterward and try to be invisible again," Peter said. Cole nodded but was lost in thought. The hospital was nearly a mile from school, and he doubted he would be allowed to see Keith when they got there. He still wasn't sure why he was going. When they arrived, Cole asked for directions to Keith's room. "Are you family?" the duty nurse asked. Cole shook his head. "Just friends?" Peter frowned at Cole. Friends, he whispered, like mud. The nurse motioned down the hall. Room 314. He's in bad shape, and his family is with him. Cole hesitated outside Keith's room. He found himself more afraid of facing... He found more afraid... Or what was it? What was the beginning of the sentence? Stumbling over my words. He found himself more afraid of facing Keith in a bed than on the street with his gang. Maybe he shouldn't have come. Taking a deep breath, he walked in. Keith's parents were standing beside his bed. They turned and greeted Cole and Peter when they entered. "Thanks for stopping by," Keith's mother said. Keith looked like a mummy with his face wrapped in gauze. Only his eyes showed. A straw protruded from his mouth through the gauze. 2 holes allowed him to breathe through his nose. An IV bag hung beside the bed. A tube from it ran into Keith's arm. He was totally helpless, unable to talk or move. Fear flashed into his eyes when he saw Cole approach. His gaze darted around the room for help. Cole fumbled with his words. I just came to see how you're doing. After starting up for a moment, Keith reached to his side and picked up a notepad and pen. Awkwardly, he scribbled a message and handed it to Cole. The note said, "Why are you here?" "To see how you're doing," Cole repeated. "I don't want you hurt." Keith scribbled another note and handed it to Cole. It said, "Thanks for the help." "No big deal," Cole mumbled. "You were choking and bleeding. Nobody else was helping you." Keith stared up curiously. Cole coughed and looked around. Keith's parents were watching him. "Hey, we gotta run," Cole said to Keith. "I just wanted to check on you. Get better, okay?" "Yeah, get better," Peter said. As Cole and Peter turned to leave, Keith's father stopped them. "Thanks for coming. I'm Troy Arnold, Keith's dad." He put out his hand. "And your names are?" Cole shook his hand. "I'm Cole," he said, "and this is Peter." The man frowned. "You're not Cole Matthews, the boy who filed assault charges against my son." The man frowned. "You're not Cole Matthews, the boy who filed assault charges against my son?" "He beat me up pretty bad," Cole said, pointing to his own black eye and swollen cheek. He lifted his shirt to show the bruises. Mrs. Arnold gasped. "Then why are you here today?" Cole hesitated. "I'm not exactly sure, but I didn't want Keith hurt. I gotta get going." "That was too weird," Peter said as they rode the elevator down to the main floor. "Way too weird. Why did you do that?" Cole didn't answer. "Hello, planet Earth to Cole." Cole stopped on the sidewalk outside the hospital and faced Peter. "When my mom gets home tonight, I'm going down to drop the charges against Keith." Peter frowned. "You've really lost it now. First you visit Keith at the hospital, and then you drop the charges? Excuse me. This is the jerk who beat you up and tried to run you over. You should be beating the snot out of him." "I am still fighting him," Cole said, realizing it even as he spoke. "By visiting him at the hospital and dropping charges?" Cole nodded. "I'm fighting him with my heart." Peter jabbed a finger in Cole's chest. "You're really weird." Cole wanted to be quiet without hurting Peter's feelings, so he pointed to a small knoll just past the end of the parking lot. "Let's go sit on that hill and try to be invisible." "Okay." Soon both boys were sitting quietly on the grassy knoll, their eyes closed. This time Cole focused his mind simply on being empty. He pretended he was a big, leaky bucket hanging from a hook, and every drip from the bucket made him emptier. The water dripped slower and slower and slower. For nearly an hour, he imagined water leaking out until finally the bucket was completely dry and floated away into the sky. As the bucket disappeared, Cole opened his eyes. He found 2 robins close by, picking worms from the grass. Sensing another presence, Cole glanced up and caught his breath. Barely 20 feet away stood the old homeless man. His ragged white blanket draped over his shoulders, baggy pants hung from his bony frame. But his shirt was tucked in, and his pant cuffs were rolled up neatly so they didn't drag on the ground. The bum stood motionless on the grass, halfway between them and his cart. His gaze was relaxed, as if he'd been standing there for some time. Cole reached out and touched Peter's arm. Peter opened his eyes, blinked, and spotted the old man. He started to stand, but stopped when the homeless man crouched and placed something in the grass. Without looking back, the man retreated and continued down the sidewalk, pushing his cart. Peter jumped to his feet and ran to retrieve the object. "It's the same bear he was carving the day the police arrested him, except now it's finished," he exclaimed. Cole took the miniature bear and rolled it in his fingers, tracing his thumb over the delicate body. "It looks real enough to start breathing," he said. "Why did he give it to us?" "Maybe because I gave him the bear I carved," Peter said. "Or maybe he knows we returned his cart to him that day." "Maybe," Cole said. And that's the end of chapter 8. Be careful with that and enjoy. Please and thank you, and I will see you for the next installment. Have a great one. Bye.